The reason why SMRT was forced to intake KUBs like last year, September, I think, was because the Deputy Director of LTA for bus assets, he sort of like dictated that SBS Transit had to transfer like their existing assets to the new operator that's gonna like take over the bus package. And this kind of similar ruling was kind of the case why Seletar Depot, the bendies are only reserved for the Yishun feeders. I know recently they tried to stunt it on 851E, but the first stop, they were told to like off service. I don't know why. And then the same thing goes for Mandai. The bendies are exclusively on 858 unless HRBC stunts. Because by contract, they state that like the bendies are only designated for several services. And you have to like transfer like the existing assets over as much as possible. I mean, I don't know how far is as much as possible, but like there is just this like hidden rule dictating that they have to transfer like their own assets over. So with the KUBs, let's recall 2007 to 2010 they were being procured not by LTA but by SBS Transit alone. And that means that it's their own assets, not the government's assets. So when something involves like your own assets, naturally, I don't blame SBS Transit for this. They would want to keep like the better KUBs, like the better maintained ones. And then those that are not as good, they're gonna transfer it over to SMRT. I mean, that's kind of what they did. And if you guys recall, it was like running fine for a few days, and then later the KUBs they just started breaking down. It's kind of like the same as that OC 500LE which broke down at the slip road between Jurong West Central 3 and Jurong West Street 64. But basically, they were kind of like unreliable, and because SBS Transit they kept the good ones to themselves and they leased the crappier ones to SMRT. That's why basically the KUBs they after a while they just started giving up basically, and because of that, several man buses, Euro 5s, they had to like transfer some over from Kranji Depot to Sunli Depot temporarily. It's like loaned. They have to loan from another depot to like cover the KUBs while they were like getting fixed, getting repaired, getting maintained and stuff like that. And I think there were around like 7 of them. I think now they have gone back to Kranji Depot, but that's not the full story, as you all know. The full story involves the KUBs being crap and what measures are taken to, circumvent the strict deployments dictated by the Deputy Director of LTA. You guys know this one, right? They were meant for 974. But there just aren't enough bus drivers on 974 to be able to, as in like, they aren't trained to drive this specific model of bus. And then you can just take it that like they have a shortage of, I think it's like double-decker trained bus captains. And then 974, it's like, I know the load has been like declining a little bit. Peak hours is still crowded, like from Jalan Bahar to Choa Chu Kang. That sector is still crowded, but it's like overall the demand for some reason has like declined. I'm not sure if it's because people still felt that like 172 was better or stuff like that, but they found 974 really, the frequency really erratic, and it was kind of like it's just an unreliable route. It gets caught in jams, KJE, PIE, and stuff like that. And I think many people just over time they like gave up on it. It was kind of the same reason how people moved away from 506 to just taking 985, which led to the decline of 506. It's something similar to that. So basically, with all these reasons in mind, oh, actually, there was one more reason. As in, like, there was one more case study. So 334, it's to Jurong East, and 49 is to Lakeside. But since the access penalty at Jurong East is quite bad, they choose to take 49 instead. And that's why 334, they downsize a lot to single decker fleet. And because of like in 974's case, the train BCs, they're not enough. And also the declining demand, they downgraded a lot of them to single decker buses. And this is where things kind of got really, really, really petty. So SMRT, they had those like newer enviros. They couldn't run it on just 974. So, and you do know that anything that involves RW toys, yeah, you cannot just deploy them anywhere. So SMRT tried deploying them on like 258 in the morning. Thankfully, they didn't like get caught or anything. And I think there was once they tried to put it on like 179. And then there was this point of time whereby one of the buses they off service. Okay, the reason for off servicing is like quite funny. It's because one of the starters they couldn't tell the difference between like 62XX. They couldn't tell which bus model was which bus model, and then they sent out the wrong bus, and then SMRT had to like quickly recall them before they get another warning letter from like RW himself, his department, some stuff like that, the off service department or stuff like that. So this was kind of like the start of the so-called rigged deployments per se. And then they had like, I think SMRT themselves, they initiate, okay, I know this is like depot right now, and then SBS Transit used to call it SLD. SBS Transit didn't really have like the DEP notation. They scrapped it like a few years ago, and then they just switched everything to like just a D that denotes depot. So SMRT kind of had like, they initiated this. They I forgot like what the treaty or the bond was, but basically it states that like now they could send assets, like their own assets, over from Kranji to Suli Bus Park, bus depot. And basically when this happened, like when this got approved, that's where all the cameos happen. So in case you're not sure what I'm like talking about, in essence, okay, there's technically Gali Batu depot coming up. The buses that are housed in these depots, like they belong to this depot, you could freely use them on Sunli Bus Park. But you're unable to use Sunli Bus Park's assets to do Kranji Depot bus services. So, and the reason for that, I don't know why this is even a thing, but it's basically something to do with mileage records. So, for some reason, if a Kranji depot or a Galibatu depot, whatever you call it, if a Kranji bus does an SLBP bus service, like the bus route, you have access to like the mileage records, like you can check them. But SLBP isn't able, the buses themselves, they aren't able to like you aren't able to check the mileage records of SLBP buses when they do KJDEP services in essence. So it's like, how do you say? You can have a KJ man running stuff like, I don't know, 192, 193, but you're unable to have like a KUB, for example, run on 67 under current rules, because if you put a Sunli Bus Park KUB on 67, it's like not programmed inside or something. I don't know. It's like they didn't really sign a treaty or what, saying that they could just transfer assets. The other way around, they didn't sign anything like this because of like this restriction when it comes to like checking and accessing the mileage records. They are unable to do stuff like KUB on 67, so that's kind of the reason. So basically, in Sunli Bus Park, there are actually like a few buses that are from Kranji Depot, but they park at Sunli Bus Park. And you could see them doing services like 172, 178, 180, 187. So this could be can be OC, it can be MAN 822, Euro 5, it can be Enviros, the batch from 2014, stuff like that. So they are Kranji Depot's buses, but you can actually park them in Sunli Bus Park so that it is like easier to, how do I say, it's like you don't incur a lot of dead mileage when you're going from Sunli Bus Park to start service at Boon Lay Interchange. And ever since they signed that treaty saying that they could send Kranji Depot buses over and then have them park at Sunli Bus Park as well, you know, OC, E5 Man, Enviro and stuff like that, that's when SMRT ran wild. They kind of gone berserk with that because they were pissed off at LTA's unnecessarily strict regulations in deployment. It's like all the KUBs, they are like in bad condition and there is just nothing to replace them. That's why they even have to come up with this treaty in the first place. And kind of like as a result of this, they started stunting the older batch of Enviros on stuff like 179, 243, and like 974. They really went wild with this. And the same goes for like the OCs, like you know 249, and then you know the MAN 822s on Sunli bus park services like 249, 251, stuff like that. And this was kind of the point. I think there was one day whereby this happened, whereby that moron from LTA finally gave up on SMRT Sunli Bus Depot. That it was like there was really no point trying to control them anymore. So they, yeah. And then fast forward to today. So what happened was that again, it's something to do with the KUBs, but I think this coming Sunday, I was told that these all currently are, wait. I forgot if these were like SMRT's assets or like under BSCP, which is like the government's assets, but SBS Transit is like, okay, more specifically, Seletar Depot, they're gonna send over some of them to swap with the KUBs that are currently in Sunli Bus Park. Okay, so it's like it's a different operator, but it's like okay, to put it simply, they are going to send over some of them to SMRT. By the way, these are like MAN 822 Euro 5s. And then SMRT is going to return some of the leased KUBs back to SBS Transit, like Seletar Depot. So you might see these in Sunli Bus Park really soon. Honestly, I keep like going back and forth between like bus park and depot, but you get the point. And basically, when the SLBP, the KUBs, they go back to SBS Transit, they could do, you know, like the full range of services. I'm just gonna put them down here. 805, 806, 7, 811, 812, 851, 852. So yeah, they could put them on these services, and it's not like limited to these as well. You can even put the KUBs on stuff like I think, I don't know, like 24, 138, 162, all the feeder services, stuff like that. So yes, you can technically have another 8146 equivalent, like a spare bus from Sunli, just casually running around doing the Sunli bus, the Sunli bus park X KUBs, the KUBs from that used to be in that depot. If the transfer is complete, you could see them just like, you know, roaming around. So that's the thing. So to end it off, in essence, you could technically have a Sunli bus park, ex-Sunli bus park KUB running on 851 and 852 once the transfer has been complete. Yeah. I'm not saying that they would run on 851 or 852, like for sure, but they could do that. Just saying the fact that they could do all these services. I might have missed out some.